Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Cloudshops. Now, many of you may know me, but there may be some new people here. So the voice that you're hearing right now is that of Oliver McTavish. He's the Vice President of Cloudscape Comics and the host of Cloudshops for these past few months. Today, I am super happy to be welcoming Janice to be our guest speaker today. She will be teaching us how to teach comics, which is kind of a niche subject, but something really important if you have an interest in getting into this sort of thing as a side revenue stream for your life as a comic artist, or if you just have dreams of being a teacher full time. I can't think of anybody better to teach us about this than Janice, who runs her own business and has taught in a lot of different community centers that I myself have worked with her on, because I'm a programmer for the City Park Board. Before we start, just as always, I'm going to say that we're super grateful to be working and living here on the unceded Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. And also on my own end from New Westminster, happy and grateful to be living on Kakite nations, as well as a lot of other Indigenous groups that are not fully recognized in a lot of our presentations. So I want to say thank you for that. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Janice.
Thank you, Oliver. Thanks for inviting me to do this cloud shop. So I'm Janice Liu. So as Oliver mentioned, I'm a teaching artist, and I teach art as my day job, like as my main job. When I'm not making comics, I'm making the bulk of my income from teaching. So I don't just teach comics, I also teach like general drawing and painting and things like that. So this workshop will have a little bit of information about like teaching art in general, but I'm also trying to like cater it to teaching comics specifically. So I teach art, but I'm also a programmer as well. I run Young Artists Place, so I'm the person also deciding what classes to offer every year and what age group are they for, and like deciding the scheduling and all those things. So I kind of have like both of those perspectives, but I'll be coming at it mostly from the point of view of a teaching artist. So I'll just talk a little bit about what this presentation will cover. So I say teaching artist as like, the topic of the presentation to differentiate this from a teacher. A teacher is like someone who works in the school system. You're like in the school during the school hours. So a teaching artist is a practicing artist who also teaches. So you are typically someone who's working with kids after they've already gotten off from school. So like you're offering after school programs or weekend programs or summer camps, which is like what me and Oliver have been doing for the past few weeks over July and August. So this presentation will cover a few things. I'm going to start by talking about the different ways that you can teach as an artist, whether you want to like get a job as a teaching artist, or do you want to like do gigs here and there, like almost like a freelancer, or do you want to like just like be a private tutor and like find your own students and teach that way. So I'll go over some of the ways you can do that. Next, I'll talk about some strategies for teaching, because this presentation is geared towards people who don't have much experience with teaching. Like maybe you're an artist and you're interested in starting to teach. So I'll talk about some like techniques that would be useful for someone who's like new to teaching. After that, I'll go over what rates to charge for teaching, depending on like what type of teaching you're doing and where you're teaching. And then finally, I will talk about like how to get more teaching work, and as well as how to find students. And just a little disclaimer that this presentation is based on my own experience. So that's, working in the Vancouver area in Canada. So the rates will be, the rates and prices that I talk about will be based on that. And also I work primarily with children. So I'm working with children aged 5 to 16. So I don't have too much experience with teaching adults. Although I'll mention it a little bit in the presentation, but that's not really my area of expertise. So you'll probably find that most of the presentation is about working with children.
We should ask Jeff about that sometime.
Yeah. Jeff has a lot more experience with working with adults, for sure. Maybe that can be like a future presentation. So here I've just got a little, a few notes about, if you want to be a teaching artist, like this is what you can expect from your lifestyle. So first of all, your hours are going to be opposite from everyone else's hours because you are teaching after kids have gotten off from school. So you're busiest on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and you're also busiest on weekdays after 4 o'clock. Kids get off school at around 3. So, the earliest they can arrive for your art class is probably like 3:45 or 4 o'clock. So like for me, for example, I typically work weekdays from around 4 p.m. I'm teaching all the way till 9 p.m. sometimes, but sometimes I end a bit earlier, like 7:30 p.m. And then my weekends are like my busiest days, which makes it like hard to find time to hang out with people who have like normal 9 to 5s. But yeah, that's just kind of something you should know about like what your schedule will look like. The second point, you usually need to be kind of like a contractor or a freelancer where you're recording your own income and you're doing your own taxes, unless you manage to get a position as an employee teaching art, which I will talk about later in the presentation. But it's very similar to, if you're a freelance artist, you invoice your clients for the illustration you made. Usually as a teaching artist, you invoice the programmer for the program you're teaching, and then you file you have to remit your own taxes at the end of the tax year. So it's like the same idea. The third thing I just want to mention is you may need to stand for long periods of time. So if that's a concern, like you may want to like talk with the person running the program if there's going to be like a seat available for you or something, because usually when you're teaching, you are standing, you're drawing on the whiteboard, you're walking around the class. So that might mean that you're standing for, a few hours at a time. So here I'll talk about different ways that you can be a teaching artist. So these are kind of like different avenues that you can go through to teach. I've kind of grouped them into 3 general categories. The first category is positions, in quotes. So positions, so this would be like a job that you apply to, and then you get hired for that position, and then you're, hopefully in that position continuously until you quit. So this is like a long-term continuous position kind of thing. So these types of positions are good if you're looking for like income stability, because that way you can like be an artist, do your comics for like say 2 days of the week, and then you can go to your job and be at this position for like 4 days of the week or something, and it's like a stable income that you can count on. So in this category, the first item is you can be a contractor at an art center. So this would include art centers that are government funded, nonprofit, so like centers that offer arts programming for children that are associated with the city or have like a nonprofit status. They will usually hire teachers as contractors, which means that they're not responsible for remitting taxes for you. and you are coming in with your own lesson plans. You are preparing everything. They don't typically train you much. So that's what that first item is. You can be a contractor. So I did this at Place des Arts in Coquitlam, and I really liked it. It offers a nice sense of freedom for you. And you can, usually this means you can like do the lesson plans however you like. So I did like that sense of freedom. The second item on this list is you can be an employee at an art studio. So this is different from the first item in that the first item, you're usually working at like a nonprofit center or somewhere with government funding or grant money. The second item, it may or may not have funding. It may be a private business. And also you are an employee, which means that this place does remit your taxes. They might pay you hourly instead of like you invoicing them. And they may pay you for your lesson prep time, or they may even provide you with a lesson plan to teach. So in the first type, if you're a contractor, you are bringing your own lesson plans. In the second type, if you're an employee, you may not have to bring your own lesson plans, but it depends on the place. Every place has their own kind of like arrangements with their instructors. And then the third type of teaching you can do here is you could be an instructor at a university or some kind of other post-secondary institution. So this is something I don't have too much experience with, but I imagine that it works similarly to being a contractor at a government-funded arts center. Let's look at the second category. So these are what I categorize as quote unquote gigs. So like these are different from positions in that gigs are like kind of like freelance jobs you get every now and again. They're not long-term continuous positions that you go to continuously. So gigs are nice to, if you want to like teach, but you don't want to do it like all the time. You're like, yeah, I would like to do a workshop maybe every few months or so. Then you might want to look into doing gigs. So the first option here is you could do one-off workshops with your local library or your local community center. So for example, Oliver works with the Moberly Arts and Cultural Center, and he hired me last year to do like one workshop for their summer camp. And so that was like a one-time thing. And then I would have invoiced that center and then they would pay me. The second option here is workshops with schools. So this is where you're actually, contacting a teacher or a principal who works in a school, and you're like, hi, can I like come in during your school hours to like talk to your kids? So you would do this like during their class time or whatever. And then if the school usually has a pool of funding that they have to, invite artists or visitors to come in and talk to kids about like various subjects. So that's another option for like gig type of teaching. And then the third category I have here is you don't want to like be hired by someone else. You don't want to, kind of like you don't mind recruiting your own students and reaching them directly. So this third category, you can do private tutoring where you just like find your own students. The schedule is totally just up to you and the student. You don't have to like rely on some other person like determining the schedule or the pay. You discuss the pay like directly with the student's parents. So that offers like a great sense of freedom for you. So you can do that either as private tutoring, or you could run your own like online workshops, maybe on Zoom or on some other platform. So those are some options to think about, and I hope that that gives you some idea of like, which of these options you would be open to and like what sounds like it's more suited for your lifestyle and your goals. Now I'll talk about some strategies that I use in the classroom. When I first started teaching, I was very shy. I did not really yeah, I was always like very nervous before classes. So these are just kind of like some tips for how to manage your classroom. I definitely always found that like the hardest part of teaching for me isn't the actual teaching or lesson, but it's like how to keep control of the classroom, especially with younger kids, and like how to just like keep the classroom organized. So my top tip here is to set up routines and expectations. And I find this is really important, especially if you're working with younger children, 5 to 8 years old. They need to know what you expect from them. So I have some examples here. Like in your first class, you can say to the kids something like, when you come into our classroom, please take out your pencil and draw on your notebooks until the class begins. So that way the kids, they know exactly what you expect of them. They won't come in and they'll be like, what are we doing today? I'm bored, like what do I do? Then you can just say like, you know what you're supposed to do. When you come in, you need to take out your pencil and you have to wait until the class starts. You can also set up expectations and routines for the end of class. So for example, everyone, when I say clean up, I'd like you to pack up your things, wash your hands, and then wait at your desk until I call your name. So this is like useful so that at the end of class, you don't get kids like running out of the door by themselves, or, running out of the classroom when they still have like paint all over their hands or like ink stains all over the hands. If you set up expectations and routines for what the kids should do after the lesson, then they might not always follow your routine, but at least it's kind of like an established expectation, and everybody kind of like knows what they're supposed to be doing. And then you can also set up expectations for how technology is supposed to be used in your classroom. So this third example here may be more relevant for teens, like 10 and up. A lot of kids have their own cell phones and they will bring them to class. So you could say something like, please ask me for permission before you use your phone in class. Or what I usually say is, I don't mind if you use your phone in class as long as you're looking up references or doing something that's related to our class. Please don't use your phone if you're checking like Instagram or Discord or something like that. So again, it's just like making sure the expectations are clear and like they know what they can and can't do in your classroom. So the second thing I have here is being specific with your instructions. Here's an example of like a not so specific instruction. Draw your speech bubbles so the reading order is clear. So if you say this, well, some students might not know like what is a clear reading order. So I would suggest saying something like, draw your speech bubbles so that the first one is at the top left and the last one is at the bottom right, so that it's like a very clear instruction on like what you want them to do. Here's another example. Instead of saying like, draw your characters with more detail, you can say something like, I want you all to check that your characters are made of shapes. Check that your character has a head, a body, a neck, and arms that bend. So then, if you get like students who just draw like a blob and put a smiley face on it, then you can give them like specific requirements of like what exactly you want from their character designs. Here are some more strategies I use. When I give instructions that include 3 or more items, I'll write them on the whiteboard. So I know that I always learn the best when I can like see something written in front of me. So this definitely helps with the students who learn best with seeing like the text written as well. And I like to write the instructions on the board because this is also a way of setting expectations. As we talked about in the previous slide, like you've literally written on the board what you want from your students. So then they can, refer back to the board if they're not sure what to do next. And especially if you're giving instructions that have like more than 3 steps, they just like might forget what the steps are. So writing them on the board is like really helpful. My next tip is after you give instructions, to check for concrete and specific understanding from your students. So concrete understanding as in like, don't just be like, does that make sense? And then like wait to see if anybody's like brave enough to be like, no, I didn't get it. So instead, what I like to do is after I give instructions, I will like draw something on the board that is like not what I asked them to do. And then I'll say like, can anyone tell me like what's wrong with this example? And then volunteers can like raise their hands and then they can like explain why that's like not what you asked of. And so that really helps, like if there's anyone in the class who's not sure, they can see like, oh, that's what I don't want to do. And then I'll also often say like, so what are the 3 things I want to see in your comic? And then you can ask people to like raise their hands if they remember what the 3 things are. So it's kind of like how when you're learning something, you might be like listening to it and you're like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I totally understand. But then if someone asks you to like explain it back to them, then that's when you can really like consolidate the information and remember it.
These are all such good tips, Janice. Do you have like a formal teaching background or education, or is this just all from experience?
I'm like mostly a self-taught teacher.
Wow, that's
But
awesome.
I did get some of this information from a um, a workshop I attended once that was about working with students with autism. I can't remember the name of the organization, but they had like really useful tips in their presentation. So I definitely learned a lot from that.
Sharing the information, I love it.
So here's an example of like, I might draw something like this on the board and I'll say to the students like, who can tell me what's wrong with this example? So what I'm hoping that they'll notice is that the reading order isn't clear with these speech bubbles. So you have like people who might go like from 1 to 3 because those are like both on the left of the page, right? So this is like an example of like what I would draw on the board, and I'll be like, I want A to talk first, and then B, and then A again. So like, how should I rearrange these speech bubbles so the reading order is like more clear? And then I can like ask for volunteers and then they can erase the speech bubbles and like reorder them. And that way they kind of like, they're really problem solving and thinking about like, how can I make this like really, really clear for my reader? This is this is another example of like an example I draw on the board. So when I teach comics, I'll talk to my students about shape language. Like when you design a character with circles, it tells us this character is like cute and friendly and bubbly, right? So if you design a character with triangles, it means that they might have a more sinister edge. So after I teach that concept, I'll usually be like, I want all your characters in your comic to be different so we can see their personalities. What's wrong with this example? Like, why do I not want my cast of characters to look like this? And like, obviously doing this isn't wrong. Like there are comics where, you know, the characters are pretty similarly shaped. But it's just to illustrate that, you know, it's not what I talked about in the techniques that I've just discussed with them. So sometimes it's a little bit, you know, oversimplified, like this is wrong. Like in art, like nothing is wrong, but it's more about like recognizing that they understand what you want them to do in that particular exercise. And then I've just got a couple more strategies and techniques for teaching. Giving boundaries is really useful. So I know as artists, we like to, you know, give people freedom and like flexibility. Um, if you say your comic can be as long as it needs to be, this may make managing the class a little more difficult for you as an instructor. You know, if one kid is like really into like making an epic comic and then one kid is like already finished with their 1 page, you might struggle with, you know, um, giving giving the people who finish first like something to do, or you know, managing like kids feeling like things are unfair. Like how come like I how come like I'm doing like lots and lots of pages and my classmates are not doing as much work as me? So so giving some like boundaries is a good thing usually to make things easier for yourself. So I'll usually be like, your comic should be 2 or 3 pages long. Each page should have no more than 8 panels. So it gives a little like, structure for them to like work within. And it still allows for creativity because they can still decide like how many panels are on each page and what the layout is and everything like that. Giving transition warnings is nice, so that the kids, they're not like feeling like they're interrupted or they're really into their work and then suddenly you're like, clean up right now. So for example, you could be like, we'll have 5 more minutes to work on your comics and then we'll take a break. So that way at least they have like a little bit of a heads up. And then the last tip I have here for classroom management is front loading. So this means you give information about what will happen before it happens. So I actually did front loading in this presentation in my first slide here. So I said, these are the things I'm going to talk about in this presentation. So that's a way of like setting up expectations with the people that you're speaking to. So I find that that's can be nice for students to know like, oh, okay, so by the end of the week, we should expect to have like, a 5-page comic drawn. That way, on the first day, they won't be like worried that they won't be able to finish their page or something. You've kind of like given them a sense of like what the timeline will look like. One method of front loading is to use a visual schedule. So this is a picture that illustrates what a visual schedule looks like. This is from Milestone's Autism Resources. So this is designed for younger children who are like learning toilet skills, but you can see that it's like, first you go to the toilet, then we'll play with our blocks. First we'll wash our hands and then you can like play with your truck. So for an art class, this might look something like, first we do our sketch, then we do our inks, then we do our color. So that way students know that, after they've drawn, you don't go straight to your color, you have to like ink first. So if they can have a visual like picture to see what each step is in the art project, then this helps them to like manage their expectations. And also for a visual schedule, if you use this technique, it is important to have a picture and not just words, especially for younger children, like, 5 or 6, a lot of them cannot read all the words yet. So having a picture is really useful. That way, if you see a student and they're like, they've jumped straight to their coloring after their pencils, then you can actually point to your visual schedule and you can remind them like, hey, look at our visual schedule. Like, what does it say after pencils? We're supposed to ink first before we color. And then the student will be like, oh, okay. And lastly, I like to use templates and worksheets when I'm working with kids. So again, like as artists, sometimes we're worried about like restricting students too much, but I think for kids 8 and younger, it's generally pretty useful to just provide the printed like comic boxes for them because their motor control isn't very good yet. So they may struggle with like drawing straight lines by themselves using a ruler and skills like that. They, once they're 9 and older, they can eventually start to like develop those skills. So I think like, having like pre-printed templates for your comic panels or like pre-printed worksheets that your students can use to like plan their story is like really useful. So with kids 9 and older, I'll usually like give them some pre-printed panels for their first comic. And then after that, I'll just show them how they can draw their own panels and then they can do the rest themselves. So this is Gogo Mac Rocket Sheep, who is a member of Cloudscape Comics. And I just have a screenshot from his website here because he has a really awesome YouTube channel. And he draws all kinds of things on this YouTube channel. I have it here as an example because I think that Rob really understands like who his target audience is. And his tutorials are like really nice, step by step. Like kids will really like following along because it's not too challenging for them. And the good thing is he usually has like easy mode and then medium mode and hard mode. So kids who are like not so confident, they can pick like the easy mode. And then kids who want to like challenge themselves, they can pick the hard mode. So I recommend watching Go Go Mac Rocket Sheep to get a sense of like I would say these videos are good for getting a sense of like ages 6 to 10 probably, like what level of like drawing is like good for them.
Rob is also a member of Cloudscape Comics, comes to all of our meetings.
So yeah, this is the section on teaching rates. And then I'll start this again with a disclaimer. This is based on my anecdotal experience. So please take this with a grain of salt. And it's from like my past 5 years in the Vancouver area only. So if you're outside Vancouver, these rates will probably be like different. So if you are working as a contractor at an art center, you can usually expect to get paid $30 to $65 for a 1 hour class. And your prep time is usually not paid. So if you work as a contractor, you're usually paid per class, not hourly. And you are bringing your own lesson plans. So if you're teaching as a contractor as an art center, just be mindful that like since you're not getting paid for your prep time, your lesson plans are your intellectual property. You should, treat those as a valuable resource that you use those to like get more work at other places that contract you. So your lesson plans, like they're just like your intellectual property. So just be careful about like, uh, sharing that with like other instructors who work at the same art center. Of course, you can like share if you like, but that shouldn't be an expectation of the art center because they're not paying you for the time it took to prepare them, if that makes sense. The second thing I have here, employee at art studio. So this is where you usually are paid hourly, and the pay varies widely. It could be as low as minimum wage for certain studios, or it could be higher. And at this type of job, you are like an employee, so you usually have other responsibilities. You might be like scheduled to like, be at reception for a couple hours, and then you have to like go teach, and then you have to like clean up the studio after your class. So that's kind of different from the contractor model in that you're paid hourly, so you're expected to do like all kinds of things within your shift. In this model, prep time usually is paid because you're being paid hourly. And some studios, they already have pre-made lesson plans. So they'll just give you those and then you can follow the lesson plan and you don't have to like prep your own. And then the final thing here, if you are teaching as an instructor at a university, again, this is not something I have my own experience with. So this is kind of just based on anecdotal, like what I've heard from other people. But I've gotten the numbers of $50 to $65 per 1 hour class. So again, that's you're paid for hours taught. You're not paid for your prep time.
Can I add a small thing?
Go ahead.
There's another way that I have seen teachers paid in community centers, and that is agreeing to a 70-30 split of registration fees. So in that case, a teacher sets the fee that they think is suitable for their class. And then however many people sign up, they run the class, and the community center retains 30% of the funds, and the artist is given 70% of the funds. So that could go both ways. It could net you more money if you set a high fee for yourself, or it could be less if it ends up being less than what an hourly rate would be. So just be aware that some community centers will do it that way.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, Oliver. Yeah, so just I guess reading your contracts before you sign, just to make sure you
Yes.
understand how the model is.
Hopefully a programmer should be upfront with you about those things.
Yeah, so that you're not like, oh no, only 2 kids signed up for the class. I'm making a very low pay now.
Yes, that's the other thing, is you need to be clear about what your minimum number of students is going to be before the class runs. If you only get like 3 students, that may not be worth it for you to run the class, and rather just take the semester off. But yeah, you arrange that with the programmer for sure.
Continuing on the teaching rates, so these are what I know about rates for workshops. For libraries, because they have public funding, so they'll usually have a specific budget for programs that they put on. So it could be anywhere from 250 to 550 per session. 550 is like very high. I haven't charged that much, but it is per session. So one session could be like an hour, or it could be 2 hours. I think that their budgets are by session, so that's why that's like the amount of money they have to spend on a session, no matter like how long it is. And they may already have their own set rate, or they may ask you for your rate. And then the next item, so workshops with community centers or nonprofits. Yeah, so there's a wide range for this. I've gone like 150, and then on the really, really high end, which is probably an outlier, is like 1,800 per session. So really depends on like that specific organization, like where their funding is coming from, and like what their budget is. And then for workshops with schools, so I have heard that public schools usually actually have a larger budget than private schools to like bring in like artists and stuff, which is kind of unexpected. But I guess that public schools get, a certain amount of funding to like invite authors or artists into their classrooms. So I've just kind of put there 125 per hour is probably the lower end of what you should charge. You can, of course, charge higher and just see what that specific school's budget is. Yeah, like just ask the teacher about that. And then lastly, if you choose to do private lessons, you can just price that however you like, really. So I've got like a big range here, like $30 an hour or over 100 an hour. And you can price this based on, like what do you feel is like acceptable for you? Like, are you traveling to get to the client? And also like, does this client have like special needs? Like they have, maybe like if they have like a child with autism, then they may really, really need an instructor. And they also may have funding from autism organizations to pay for that tutoring. So in that case, if they do have funding, then you may be able to charge a higher rate because it's like so specialized, like a specialized type of art instruction that you're giving. So now I'll talk a little bit about how to get booked for the gigs. So in the first section when I talked about like positions and then gigs. So for positions, if you're interested in those, you would usually just like apply for a job in the same way that you apply for any job. But gigs, because they're more like booked like freelance style, so you have to kind of like yeah, like these are kind of like my tips for how to get booked for those. If you're just starting out and you don't have like any connections, you can try cold emailing people, and you want to look for people with position of something like teen librarian or children's librarian or arts programmer, and that's the person who you should contact because they are responsible for like deciding like what artists to bring in. So for example, like Oliver's official title is like cultural art programmer, is that right?
Community arts programmer.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so then you would send Oliver an email and be like, hi, I have this skill. Would you like me to like come in and do this workshop? And then see what they say. Something that is important for this cold emailing method is that programmers, they program seasonally. So libraries will program around 2 months in advance of the season, and then art centers, they vary, maybe up to like 6 months in advance. So I've put here kind of like what the seasonal checkpoints are. So for example, January to March is the winter season. Then you have spring break. And then April to June is the spring season, and so on and so on. So for example, if you want to give a workshop in March, you wouldn't email people in January because they would have already programmed the whole winter session by then. So if you want to give a workshop in March, you should email them at least like November or maybe even a little bit earlier, because people program in like batches. Um, yeah. Oliver, is that kind of your experience?
I generally do in batches, yeah, kind of like you say, the school season, September to December, on and on, so forth. I generally don't program in the summer except for camps though.
Mm-mm.
But if you can get into a camp, I mean, you're made for the entire summer.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is July to August. The summer season is like is nice because yeah, then you can have like something to do for the entire summer for July to August. So word of mouth is really important. So once you've like worked so hard to like, cold email people and like get that first gig, then if you do a good job, then the programmers may refer you to other programmers that they know. So like I've had people from like one Burnaby Community Center refer my name to like a different one. So that's always really nice. So I am a little bit old fashioned, but I have kind of like a few things I do try to do to like make a good first impression with a programmer who I'm meeting for the first time. One is I'll usually send them an email 1 or 2 days before the workshop to be like, hi, I'm excited to do our workshop on this date at this time. And that's kind of just like a nice way to be like, hey, I still remembered that I'm coming. Because I know that like for me, like as a programmer, sometimes I'll be like sweating on the day of. I'll be like, oh God, did they remember? Please like remember. Yeah.
We're sweating on the other end of that for the exact same reason.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is really good advice. Yeah, make sure you stay in contact with your programmer so everybody knows. Don't worry, nobody forgot.
Yeah, like if I've like hired a teacher to like do a class and it's 10 minutes before the class and they haven't arrived, I'm definitely sweating. Because like once the participants start arriving, it'll get pretty like hectic. So that's why the second point I have here is like be punctual and reliable. So please like be there on time. I have this little like ritual that I do. I like try to get to the venue 30 minutes before the start time, and then I'll sit in my car for 10 minutes, and then I'll go in and meet the person like 20 minutes before the workshop starts. So I kind of just do that. Or you can like ask the programmer, like, what are your expectations? Like, how early do you want me to arrive? Because, I don't know, some programmers might not want you to like be there an hour early because they might be like doing other office work. Oliver, what's your preference for like how early you like people to arrive?
Usually I like to talk to the teachers ahead of time to ask them how much time they need for setup. So most of them don't need more than 15, but for people who are like, I don't know, drummers, taiko drummers need like an hour to set up. So usually a good programmer will be in touch with you ahead of time to sort of set that expectations for when they expect you. But yeah, around 15 minutes to half an hour, I would say. Certainly don't want you guys to come too early because you shouldn't be doing work for free. So yeah, make sure you only come as early as you're comfortable with.
That's great to know. So 15 minutes to half an hour-ish. And then one last thing I have on here is, before the program, you check in with the programmer, but after the program, I just like find it nice to also send an email being like, hey, like, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it. I would like to do it again. Please keep me in mind if you want to do more programs. It's a little old fashioned to send a follow-up email, but I just feel like it's, you're letting them know that like you want to do it again, and that way maybe next time when they program for the next season, then they'll think of you. Or yeah, I don't know, just a follow-up to like show that like you appreciated being invited. And then this is one more tip for how to get booked for more gigs. Document your teaching. So take photos of yourself teaching, like ask the programmer to help you take photos when you're teaching, because if you have photos of you teaching on your website, then someone looking for workshops will go on there and they'll be like, oh, wow, like, this person, there's that like actual like physical evidence that like they've done this type of thing before. So if you've like, gone to all that effort of like preparing for a lesson, like booking yourself for a gig, then it's really worth it to like have documentation of that. So testimonials are also really useful. If you feel like you've made a really, really strong connection with the programmer, or that a specific workshop went really, really well, you might want to just be like, hi, would you mind like writing a 1 or 2 sentence like testimonial, just saying like how your experience with me was? And that is kind of taking up the person's time, so just be like really courteous about it. And if they're willing to like write a couple sentences for you, then you can kind of like put that on your website, and then other programmers can see like, oh, this programmer who I've heard of at so and so center like said good things about this person, so yeah, maybe I should like consider them. Here's some of my documentation from the most recent workshop I did with Burnaby Public Library. So the picture on the right is the work that we ended up doing at the workshop. So that's all the students' work. This is the teen, this is for teens. So they all like drew their own chibis. And then here I've got a few slides where I'm just showing how other teaching artists have documented their like visits and gigs and stuff like that. So this is from the writer of the Last Kids on Earth books, and he does like huge school visits. His books are super popular, so his website is a really good resource to look at for like if I was a programmer or a teacher and I looked at this, I'd be like, whoa, I like really want this person to come talk to my kids. So there's like the photos, there's the testimonials, so it's like really nice documentation.
Just as a quick aside here, it's important to make sure that you get permission to take photos in your classrooms. I know a lot of parents aren't happy with seeing their kids being used for promotion for people's stuff. So you can get parents to sign forms that say, I'm okay with my kid being used for promotion. And if you don't, handy trick, always take photos from the back of their heads. Because as long as the kid is unrecognizable, then it is completely allowed to use their photos. So what I like to do when I do documenting evidence, you've got a good picture of it right there actually, is take a photo of their hand working on something that to show the kids working on comics, or the backs of their heads, and focus on the teacher. So you still see the teacher doing their stuff. Just a heads up on that one.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that, Oliver. I totally forgot, but yeah, please don't take photos of people's kids without their permission. Yeah, so the hand trick is like a good one, or like back of the head. So here's like a screenshot from another educator. Kathy G. Johnson works specifically in comics, has so many great like comic teaching resources on her website. Please go check them out. Like she really has like a strong brand as a comic educator. She has lots of photos, lots of documentation, and yeah, I recommend checking out her website. Here are some screenshots from another educator, LJ Baptiste. So he has so many photos on his Instagram of like all these different like workshops and teaching things he's done. So I think these are just like really nice because you can see like the programmer will look at the left picture and be like, ooh, he does live drawing demos, and then looks at the right, ooh, like presentation, and then looks at the middle, ooh, looks like, you know, the kids are really having fun. And then so, you know, having the photos is like really nice. They kind of get a sense of what to expect from you. And so, yeah. This is from Shayna Liu. Shayna has just one picture here, but she has a list of like all these workshops and all these classes that she's taught. So this is also really nice to have, to just like keep a record of it. It's almost like a resume of like all the different teaching stuff you've done. And then this one is from our very own Cloudscape president, Kathleen. So Kathleen actually has a whole video, a whole recorded video of a workshop that she's done. So I think this is really nice because then, you know, people can literally click on it and see what your voice sounds like, how you communicate, how you explain things. So having a literal recorded video is like really good documentation. And then again, it's like, just make sure you have consent from participants to record videos, because yeah, that's just something to be like mindful of. And so all of this was about how to get gigs, like how to like get booked for like workshops and stuff. So this is just a little small section about like how to get students if you are the one going out there and getting students yourself. So if you're working at an art center, they do all the registration for you. But if you do want to go out there and look for your own students, here are some tips. If you want to teach locally, like in person, I would recommend Facebook groups, because that's where parents hang out, like the age of people who are current parents. So I'll usually search for something like local city, like I search for like Burnaby moms group, or like Burnaby childcare group, or you know, stuff along those lines, and see what Facebook groups come up. Read the rules, like is promotion allowed? And if it is, then you can just make a post being like, hey, I'm like a local artist, I offer classes. And sometimes I do get, I've gotten quite a few like new students just from posting in Facebook groups. You can also look at local resources like community magazines or community bulletin boards. So like in the library, there might be like a bulletin board where people can like post your ads for free. So, you know, people are bringing their kids to libraries, they're bringing to kids to like local community centers, and parents are out there and they're like actively, you know, searching for art classes and teachers. So if you were a parent, you would probably read like your local like Burnaby or Surrey, or like, you know, your neighborhood kind of like events listings type of things. So yeah, try to like get your classes in there if you can. And then for both local and online classes, I think it's useful to like have a niche. So that's why, like, for example, comics teacher is probably a pretty good niche. Comics teacher of your specific city is like an even better niche, because that's what parents are usually searching for. Well, they might be searching art teacher instead of comics teacher, but that way, if someone does search comics teacher, then you'll, you know, pop up. And having your specific city there is like useful for local. If it's online, you know, there's like so much more competition out there. So I've just got here to like find online communities where you think that parents will be spending time, and try to like reach them there. And then also to like use analytics on your website so you can see how exactly people are getting to your website. And that way you have a better sense of like what people are searching for and like who they are and stuff like that. And this is just kind of like a random app that I found that I thought was interesting. This is Dim Sum Warriors, and they're like an app, but they also offer like live stream classes, but they also offer like, yeah, just a bunch of online classes. So this is a really good model for like online classes. Their niche is they're targeting like, I think they're targeting like Chinese Americans or like Chinese parents who want their kids growing up in North America to still learn Chinese. So their program is very much about like learning Chinese through fun activities like comics and drawing. And I don't know much about this, but they seem pretty successful, and I think their marketing looks really good. So check that out if you're interested in like more of an online model. And this is nearing the end of the presentation. So all I have here is just some samples from students from my comics camp this summer. This is by a 10-year-old student. This I wanted to put in here because I was so proud of the student, because we talked about worm's eye view and how that makes your subject look intimidating, and he used worm's eye view here to make the king look really like powerful. So I was so happy to see this. And then this was also really great to see because this student was specifically using an inking technique that I showed her of how you like thicken some lines and then make them thin again. And she also tried to draw like bird's eye view in the first panel there, where it's like looking down from above. So I was really, really impressed. As a teacher, it's always really rewarding when you teach or you say something and then the kids like actually do it. So yeah, I just like that, so I put it in.
Those are amazing.
Yeah, they're really great. Love to see it. We love to see it.
We love to see it. I'm still trying to get worm's eye view, so man, props to that kid.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how do I draw this so it's not like humongous feet? But yeah, I think he did a really good job.
Yeah, really good.
And that's it. So yeah, I guess that if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And if you want to like stay updated on what I'm doing with my teaching, you can go to my website and subscribe to my mailing list, because I'm trying to post more blogs about like with comic lesson plans and stuff, and you can like download those and use them for free. So I just posted a free lesson plan today. So if you want to be notified when I post those on my blog, you can go to my website and subscribe to my mailing list. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janice. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to ask some questions, but I've got your websites in the chat so everybody can take a look. It was really, really informative, especially all those tips about how to help make a classroom work towards the same goals, common goals on how to learn and setting expectations and things like that. I've been a programmer for a long time, and I've only taught a handful of workshops. And having those kind of skills would have made a lot of those workshops go a lot smoother, in my opinion. So I learned a lot here today myself.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, it's definitely just a process of like trying different things and then slowly learning like what works the best.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like you said, you're a self-taught teacher, so seems like a lot of it is just experience, learning what works in a classroom, what doesn't, and doing a lot of your own learning.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story, which is like the first gig I got teaching creative writing, like yeah, that was like the first time I went to teach in a community center. And for some reason, the first group of kids I got there at that gig, they were just like it was just a combination of strong personalities, and like it was a very, very difficult class to manage, and I struggled so much in that first term. And it was the fall term too, which is the longest one. It's like 13 weeks, and I was just like, oh my god, I don't know how to like, keep this class under control. I'm such a terrible teacher. I like am not like teaching them anything. They hate this class, they hate me. And sometimes you just get classes like that, but
That can happen.
yeah.
The first 2 weeks of our camp, apparently we were front loaded with all of the most rambunctious, high energy students. And then the back half was all just like all the calm students. So sometimes you just have the luck of the draw, not a reflection on you at all.
Totally. Yes, yes. Yeah, teaching can be like emotionally like draining sometimes. So please don't like ever feel like, you're like, I don't know, sometimes you feel responsible and you're like, oh, they've entrusted me with their children and I'm not teaching them anything. Just, try to keep working at it. Like everyone has to, everyone has to go through ups and downs. So don't worry, you're doing great, sweetie.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just a matter of making sure the kids come out the other end alive, and then there you go, you've taught them for a day. That's a win in itself sometimes.
Mhm.
Well, that was great. The next time we're going to see you guys back here together is going to be on August 30th. We're going to be learning from Bailey McCobb how to put your illustrations on products, putting your art to work. Basically, this is going to be a really good workshop if you want to learn how to sell products and make some money off of the art that you have made and become your own production person. So Bailey's going to show you how to do that. It'd be really good for all comic artists to learn how to do this kind of merchandising for their own stories and things like that. So that will be at 7:30 on August 30th. We'll see everybody there. Thanks again, Janice. We'll hope to see you around and see you at the next Cloudscape.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.